Used car prices are dropping nearly across the board, and it's a fairly unanimous opinion across the automotive industry that used car prices will continue to fall, which is great news for used car buyers. But what the heck is going on with new cars? What's going on with those prices? And though the outlook for used cars is pretty positive all the way around, the outlook for new cars is, well, pretty bleak. The average transaction price for a new vehicle in the United States has increased 11.8% year over year, bringing us to an average new vehicle price of $48,043. But unfortunately, despite the fact that new car prices are undoubtedly inflated and much higher than they were pre-pandemic, it doesn't look as though these new car prices are going to be going down anytime soon. And there are a few key reasons as to why. First and foremost is supply chain problems, which are just hammering the automotive industry. For the better part of the year, automotive manufacturers have had to set expectations to the fact that supply chain is having an impact on production and bottom line. Just a couple of weeks ago, Ford announced that they had an additional $1 billion in expenses due to supply chain shortages, causing Ford's worst day in the market in over 10 years. Ford currently, as I'm recording this video, has tens of thousands of cars sitting at Kentucky Motor Speedway waiting for parts in order to complete production. Even the Ford badge is being affected by the supply chain issue. And the unfortunate reality is, this isn't just a Ford problem. Toyota has repeatedly curbed expectations and expressed concerns with the supply chain and how it affects production. So has General Motors. And believe it or not, the chip shortage, which has been in full force for over a year now, is still affecting production across the board. Not just with vehicle manufacturing, but with manufacturing for virtually everything that we use in our day-to-day life. It is still having an impact, and experts aren't exactly sure when this will be resolved. But as valid as these supply chain woes are, I do think that this is a very easy scapegoat for vehicle manufacturers to use. It's simple for them to throw their hands up and say, you know what, we have to raise our prices because of supply and demand. It's not our fault that the supply chain is such a mess. And those supply and demand, the supply chain problems, these are all valid reasons for car prices to go up, but it absolutely is not the only factor at play here. Another major factor as to why car prices are going up is the types of cars that are being sold today versus the types of cars that were being sold even a few years ago. Cars are changing rapidly, and the price point is changing along with it. You can see, according to this graph, that in 2020, the average price for a new car was around $40,000. Keep in mind that this is average, which is never a perfect metric to go by, but it is the one that's most commonly used in the automotive industry. So whenever we take all of the vehicles that were purchased in 2020, from a college student's first car to a billionaire's 10th supercar, if you accumulate all of those vehicle purchases together and take the average, that comes out to about $40,000. And today, that average $40,000 mark has become $48,000, which is a significant increase. And one of the reasons why we've seen such a substantial increase is because of the types of cars that manufacturers are now producing and selling. Manufacturers have discontinued their more basic, cheaper vehicle models in favor of higher-end and higher-margin vehicles that come at a much higher price tag. So if 90% of the new cars priced at below $18,000 are no longer available to buy, of course that is going to sway the national average price for a new car. And that is exactly what has happened. Buyers on a budget, specifically buyers looking for a car in that $18,000 or below price point, have simply been priced out of the new car market. There are very few options for new cars in this price range. So when you take the majority of budget new car buyers and take them out of the equation and force them to buy used, of course this is going to impact the national average for new car prices. Now, don't get me wrong, new car prices are also increasing on an individual vehicle basis. For example, Ford, GM, Tesla, and Rivian are all vehicle manufacturers that have recently rose the prices of some of their cars. But we also can't deny the fact that a big reason as to why the national average price for a new car is continuing to increase or has increased substantially over the last year is because manufacturers have discontinued many of the cheaper budget vehicles that brought that average down. And though there are still some budget cars on the market today, they're not being sold in the same quantity that they once were. And thus it's bringing the average up as a whole. Now, if you've seen my channel before, you know that I place a lot of blame on the manufacturer and the dealership for the current situation that the automotive industry is in today. And I've talked about this repeatedly on my channel, but I do feel as though you can't talk about new car prices and the reasons for these price increases without putting at least some of the blame on the consumer directly. And that is absolutely a factor at play here. Auto loan debt in July of this year reached a record high of $1.43 trillion, and the average loan taken out on a vehicle surpassed $20,000 for the first time ever. And sure, there is a valid argument to be made that the reason why we've seen these record-breaking numbers in the auto loan industry is because of the fact that prices went up. So of course, people had to pay more money and thus take out more in loans. But we also can't ignore the fact that this also comes down to consumers' desire to wanting a nice, new, and shiny vehicle regardless of the cost. Consumers are much more drawn to the high-end luxury car with panoramic sunroofs, Apple CarPlay, heated and cooled seats than they are an older beater-like car that they can pay for in cash. And this is in turn raising car prices. Over the last 2 years, we as consumers have showed that we will pay an absurd price for new cars, much more than these cars are actually worth on paper. And even today, as the economy is shifting and declining, demand is still there for new cars. And I think unfortunately that demand will stay there, at least to a degree. Because dealerships are switching to a small footprint and physical storefronts. They're going to stop keeping so many vehicles on hand at any given time. Manufacturers are doubling down on their higher margin, more expensive cars. So even once the supply chain problems are worked out, the supply simply won't return to what it was pre-pandemic. And because of that, neither will prices. In 2021, consumers showed the manufacturer and the dealership that we will pay whatever price we have to in order to drive our brand new shiny dream cars. And unfortunately, in the process, we've all been shot in the foot. Now, there is one piece of the puzzle that, depending on how it shakes out, could throw this entire video out the window, and that is a recession. Now, there is, of course, an argument about whether or not we're actually in a recession as we speak, and I'm not here to debate about that. But there is also a debate on what the severity of a recession will actually be. Which industries will be affected? How will the average consumer be affected? How will the bottom line of the average household be affected? And depending on the severity of a recession, I think that will have a huge impact on the new and used car industry. And I think it will really give us a glimpse on what new car manufacturers are going to do moving forward. Will they continue pricing their cars higher and higher and higher, or will they be smacked with reality and have to lower the price of their cars in order to meet with current economic demands? And honestly, I am not smart enough to make that prediction, but I am incredibly interested to see what ends up happening, and I think that we will find out in the next couple of years. But with that being said, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I'll see you guys in the next video.